Marcus. Again, happy Father's Day. And I also know that this can be a painful day. It can be a painful reminder for some folks. And if that's you today, I just want you to know that I'm willing to make myself available if you need to talk, if you want to have a cup of coffee or anything like that. I know this can be a hard season for some folks, so I'm here for you if that's the case. And I want to be honest with you guys too and let you guys know when I need things. Say a prayer for me. I found out that I've got like extremely high blood pressure. I've been feeling weird for a while. I've been really dizzy and confused and exhausted. And I told my doctor, I was like, hey, a little known fact, I'm a little on the big side. I like bad food. And I know I had it well. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. And my doctor just kind of brushed it off and was like, your heart's fine. Well, I found out this week I do have high blood pressure, which we've been saying for months, and if you could just pray for me and be patient with me, that would be awesome. So, again, please show your support this month by purchasing one of the NAACP shirts over there that's going to their general fund. I know they would greatly appreciate it. And Simba Kenyatta from the NAACP was going to be here today, but he decided he's going to do next week. So he's going to do a presentation, and I encourage all of you to please be here for that because it's so important that we show up and we be allies, especially when we're asked to be, right? All right. So we are going to be moving on in Thomas. We're going to be in Logia 32 and 33 this week. So let's read that together. It says this: Jesus said, a city being built on a high mountain and fortified cannot fall, nor can it be hidden. Jesus said, preach from your housetop that which you will hear in your ear. For no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel, nor does he put it in a hidden place, but rather he sets it on a lampstand so that everyone who enters and leaves will see its light. If they'd like to share what they talked about in their group. Anybody? Allie, go ahead.
We were saying in the second part, the light being like kind of guiding thing, but like you shouldn't be, if you've got gained knowledge, you should be sharing it, not hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
So like with us, like we're learning about the Bible is actually teaching us that's what we should be sharing with people and not keeping it to ourselves that people can learn from us.
Yeah, that's good. How often do we not bring up certain bits of knowledge because we might offend a family member or we might offend someone that we know, and it's like, let's just not talk about it. They're not going to agree. But I think it's important to share knowledge. That's a good observation. Jason.
I think it's saying two things. One, speak to your neighbors, speak to those who know your value and your worth, and speak to those who you think should actually hear what you have to say. Because closed ears is a waste of energy.
I agree. That's good stuff. Take two more. Yes. Mm-hmm.
This one reminds me of a favorite quote of mine, who is from one of our current presidential candidates, Marianne Williamson.
Okay.
And maybe some of you have heard it about our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes on to talk about letting our light shine and not hiding it under a bushel. So this quote always reminds me, this passage always reminds me.
Good stuff. Yes, Brandon.
It's a good reminder of, the city on the hill has been a powerful metaphor for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Since John Winthrop first evoked it in the American context in the Plymouth colony.
Mm-hmm.
The newspaper up at the UCSC campus is called City on the Hill Press.
Okay.
And it's been used to proclaim America, we're the city on a hill to the whole world. And so it's been, appropriated for the purposes of imperialism.
I remember when George Bush did that.
That's right.
GW did that.
But before him, so did Mario Cuomo at his 1984 Democratic National Convention keynote. So it's a metaphor that circulates widely and it has a gospel foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once again, imperialism hijacks our stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of my observations this week, I think, kind of piggybacking off of what Bernie just said, I think this is a passage about how to deal with systemic oppression. No matter what your thoughts are about Christ's divinity, which in this room we have many varying opinions about that, first and foremost, one thing that is obvious historically is Christ was some form of activist. We know that. We may disagree on how Christ participated in protesting the government, but Christ was definitely a political activist. And we know from our study of Mark last year that things were not good for the Jewish people in the Empire of Rome. Tax collectors were burdening their society on a daily basis, and as corruption typically does, it was getting worse, and it was only going to get worse unless the people figured out a way to deal with it. Now, this verse is kind of funny to me, that as far as the imagery is concerned with a lamp and a basket, because if you hide a lamp under a basket, and if you don't shine it for all the world to see in order to illuminate something, you do one of two things. You either put a lamp under a basket and cover its light, which makes the lamp pointless, or it's a fire hazard. One of the two, only two options. And if someone is dumb enough to do that in their hut and it burns down, it's just natural selection doing its thing, right, at that point. We become stronger as a species, I'm kidding. So I often ask myself when I see parables like this, why is this parable and parables like this, passages like this, necessary to Jesus? Like, Jesus, my dude, why are you speaking in riddles all the time? And Jesus seemed to want people to let go of their analytical tendencies and embrace a childlike sense of wonder. You hear these stories and they don't make sense and they stick with you when you read them in the Gospels and even when you read them in Thomas. And I've come to the conclusion that Jesus was a brilliant teacher. He must have been brilliant because we argue about his teachings 2,000 years later. Like, we're still talking about Jesus. We're still going to a church that talks about Jesus every week. And I think verses like these in Thomas and in the other Gospels, because we've seen this verse in other Gospels, were designed not just to be absorbed, but to be a catalyst for questioning, to wake us up, as the Gnostics would have said. Now, these passages, aka logia, stick with us and we chew on them and we come away with more every time we visit them in our weekly or daily readings. And it's almost like the most direct way to understand the teachings of Jesus is to come at them sideways, not straightforward. And not only was Jesus a creative instructor, but Jesus had this unique method of protest of making love loud. And I think that was the sideways message of this passage. For Jesus, you have to stand up to corrupt policies while also attempting to convert the oppressor in the process, or at least not die so the movement can continue, right? At least your following needs to not die, so it doesn't get killed out. He was willing to die to be a catalyst or something, but I don't think he wanted the movement to die. And Jesus taught us to love our enemy too. Of this, there is no denial, at least for me, because for Jesus, loving someone meant that you will not allow them to be held in the bondage of hate-filled rhetoric and actions. Thank God people didn't leave me in my hate-filled rhetoric and actions. If you love your enemy, you won't allow them to continue to be enslaved by hatred and oppressive ideals. But it is just important that you also do not let their oppression go unchallenged. And I think we often make this mistake in this country. This is something that I debate with other Christians about a lot. This week has just been a fun trip. We've been advertising the book, and I've been having lots of these debates. And I've had some fun, snarky comments, and I've had to block a few of them. But this comes up. The conservatives believe that protests are a bad thing, and that Jesus would want us to be peacemakers with the empire and obey the law, no matter what, no matter how unjust that law may be. We should always obey the law. And on the other side of the coin, I have this debate occasionally, nowhere near as much, ultra-progressives think that violent warfare against the state is an appropriate course of action. But when they got fighter jets and you got a gun, if I was a betting man and I had $1 million to your $1, I would put my $1 million on your $1. You're going to lose the fight, right? So I think Jesus had a different way to deal with oppression. And honestly, I don't see evidence of either of those philosophies of the ultra anarchist and the ultra conservatives in the Bible. I don't see it. What I do see is that Jesus had no problem protesting empire, but he would never condone violence against the state. And I do not think it was because Jesus did not feel that some causes were worth fighting for and worth dying for. I think Jesus was all about a fight if necessary, but how we fight mattered. And instead, rather than teaching folks to be complicit or complacent, or to throw their lives away in a pointless attempt at taking on a legion that outgunned those under the boot of oppression, Jesus would teach others how to conduct non-violent subversion. Remember, Jesus hardly ever spoke of heaven and hell after death. He talked about them in the realm of now. And for the now of Jesus, Roman rule was oppressing his people. And we talk about that often here. Rome was burdening Jewish peoples with unjust taxes, and their land was stolen from them, from these invaders, and they just wanted the oppression to end. And rather than offering a military solution, or some self-help book, like a chicken soup for the soul thing, to find peace in a shit sandwich, Jesus offered a third way, a nonviolent, radical, but loving way, but a loving way that was allowed. And we saw this in the Sermon on the Mount. Do you remember the passage that talked about turning the other cheek? Have you ever heard that passage before? Now, most people take that to mean just let the enemy hit you back as often as they want. Don't fight back, just let them hit you. And I don't think that's quite what Jesus was saying. And actually, I would like a volunteer that is okay with coming up here and okay with being on camera. But have a volunteer. Jason, come on up. I'll give Jason a round of applause. Good sport. I need the mic. I don't talk very loud. I sound loud. This helps. All right, come stand right here. All right, so in that culture, a Roman soldier was able to slap a Jewish citizen with an open hand, with their right hand. If you slap somebody with your left hand in a lot of cultures, or touch even someone with your left hand in other cultures, why is that a bad thing? Does anybody know? You wipe yourself with it. Get your dirty hand. And back then, they didn't have access to wonderful antibacterial soap dispensers in their bathrooms all the time. So you didn't touch people with this hand for good reason. That wasn't dirt under the nails. So you kept that hand to yourself, but you could slap someone with an open hand this way. Now, what most people take it to mean is turn the other cheek means I'm giving you permission as my enemy to continue beating me. That's not what they were saying. What they were saying when they turned that cheek is they were giving Roman soldiers two options. You either had to hit me with a closed fist, which was actually punishable to the Roman soldier. Roman soldiers could be put to death for beating someone with a closed fist if they were caught, or they had to strike them with their left hand, which would have shamed the person that was striking them because it was such a social faux pas. You just did not touch people with your left hand. And if you were striking someone with that hand, you were seen immediately as an evil person. So this act of subversion was a way of the citizen that was under the boot of oppression to say, show me how evil you really are. Show the world how evil you really are. And if you want to be put to death and risk your life, go ahead and close that fist. Let's do this. I think I'll give Jason a round of applause. So, in the same group of scripture, there's also verses about Jesus saying, if someone comes to take your shirt, give them your coat as well. Anybody read that verse before, heard that verse? So, I think this verse is funny because I wonder if somebody actually did it, because it would be hysterical. For Jewish people at this time, it was shameful to look on the body of a person that was naked in public. It was considered disgraceful for you to look at them, which I think that kind of, shame maintained itself through the years. I think I would not want to look at just some random person running through the street naked. So for Jewish people, if you were suing someone, if you were a rich tax collector, you were coming to take their shirt, take all of their possessions, what Jesus was saying was strip down naked and make them look at you naked, because then you're shaming them publicly, which if somebody did that, I kind of think it would be pretty funny just to watch. Like, oh, you want to take all my stuff, bro? How you like me now? Anyway, so Jesus is essentially saying that unless you make your voice heard, oppression will not end. You might not be able to fight them with weapons. They may outgun you at every turn, but unless you hit the streets and creatively figure out how to disrupt peacefully, the rich will only get richer, and the poor will only continue to drown in iniquity and in injustice. So this passage is not a glimpse of the afterlife, but rather a recipe for a peaceful method of combating fascism. Who wants to share? Anyone? Oh, yes, Anna.
Well, one of the things Jody and I were talking about is that it's really a lot like holding up a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes people go through life unaware of the things that they do daily, the things they say that might be harmful, the things they do that might be harmful. They just don't even have a light on it. They're not. And so to say, well, even not to say, but to force them to look at that, to force them to even go farther, is a way of saying, do you see this mirror? Because this is who you are. And make that choice, but know that this is who you are. It's kind of a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, there were times in history where this type of protest, yielded transformation for certain individuals. There's a story, and I'm trying to remember the name. He was a famous Anabaptist that was captured, and he escaped in the middle of winter. He had lost so much weight because they just didn't feed him for months. And he was running over the ice, and the soldier that was chasing him, because he was well-fed and because he was wearing armor, fell through the ice, and the Anabaptist actually came back and rescued him. And I think the quote that he said to him was, "This is what you wouldn't have done for me." And then they still captured him, and the soldier actually fought for their life. They were like, "Look, just imprison him for life. He's not going to hurt anyone. Don't execute him." They executed him anyway, but then that soldier went on to become an Anabaptist and to migrate to New Cape. And so there are moments like that where you force someone to look at their actions with just radical acts of, reflection, as I guess you would put it. And they do yield benefit. Who else we got? Yes, Jason.
For me, where I find myself rising up is against narcissism. And because of certain people in my life, I no longer have a tolerance for that, or only ignore it in my life. So I have a tendency to pay attention to what those certain people say and do, and I have the capacity to remember what they said, and as soon as they start open themselves up, I just cause them to face what it is that they've said and done. And I try to refuse to let them change the past to avoid being responsible for what they say, and they just slip away defeated. And the more often they try to do this with me, the harder it is when it dries up, because they know that no one's tolerating their behavior.
Yeah, it's true. It's an unfortunate reality. I think somebody else. Was it you?
Yeah, sorry, for scared.
Oh, sorry. I would love to hear the rest of that story later.
I was just saying, it's kind of like there's a meme going around when someone says a racist joke or a sexist joke or whatever. You just pretend like you don't know what they mean, so they have to like explain it, which doesn't make it racist.
Yeah. I don't understand what you mean. I don't understand what you mean. Explain it some more.
Yeah.
So if they're as dense as I am, they probably explain it like 9 times. I'm like, oh gosh. Not that I would make the joke, but I would be dense. I would not catch that. Who else we got? Yes.
Well, it's like, kind of what you guys are saying. I remember one of my professors telling us, have you ever guys seen the funniest videos ever?
Oh yeah.
And he goes, turn off the volume and look at it. And what do you see? Coaches. You don't see the reality. It's funny at the time because everybody's laughing, everybody's giggling, but turn off the volume and what do you really see?
Pain. And I'm going to be honest, like moment of transparency, I'm the worst at laughing at those videos. Like, I'm from the South, so like hold my beer is like the mantra of the state that I'm from. Like, people do the dumbest thing, and I used to laugh at that. That's actually a good point. And we're all laughing, it's all fun and games.
Until he said that, I literally stopped watching that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's good stuff. I saw one other hand back on Gareth.
I think for me, I hate confrontation. As a person, I really hate confrontation, and I avoid it at all costs. And that's something I'm working on this year in relation to my family and my friends that are still extremely conservative. And it's not even the sense that like I want to necessarily change their mind, although that it'd be nice to like be heard. But it's just even being able to say it, like just even being able to be honest, be myself, and tell the truth about what I think is so incredibly hard for me. And I think that I do myself and people around me and my belief system a disservice by just sitting quietly and being like, I just don't have the energy to engage in this fight, and I don't want to deal with you, being angry with me or thinking differently of me. But I think it's something that's really necessary and needs to happen. So I want to be better at that.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, this particular idea of the let your light so shine metaphor, it ties in so closely, in the Sermon on the Mount, it ties in so closely with the Great Commission at the end of Matthew. And, whatever Jesus might have thought in terms of letting your light shine, and what light he was hoping might get shown by giving this permission to shine your light. It certainly has become part of the foundation of evangelical evangelism.
Yeah.
They certainly regard themselves when they're talking about the need to discriminate against gays. They very much think they're shining the light Jesus wants them to shine. And there's a reason, as a sociologist that studies these things, why evangelism and evangelicalism within the U.S. has held its ground, even if it is now starting to shrink and having a hard time expanding. They have been fearless in spreading their message in a way that your average progressive Protestant church, shies away from, completely. That do not let your light shine.
We don't want to offend people. We don't want to offend people. But they're offending people all the time. Yeah, that's a great point.
And so, that's, it's hardly a surprise that mainline Protestantism has been shrinking, given the do not let your light shine mantra, that has been so central to it.
Yes, I think common bigotry is one of our biggest problems in the church. And I think there's also a difference between offending someone and harming someone. Like, my truth may offend you, but this is how you love your enemy. You're my enemy, but I'm telling you the truth. And I'm sorry, your feelings are hurt, but you're actually hurting people with policy. And there's a big difference. That's good stuff. Yes?
I like that this puts the responsibility on the person that you're interacting with. It's not saying, like, go find someone and make them look at the light, or, like, go seek out people who are sitting in the dark and give them a lamp. It's saying, like, be the light that you are, and if someone, like, comes to you saying something that you don't agree with, so, like, the turn the other cheek idea, like, make the light available to them, or, like, continue to put it out, but you don't have to, like, force other people to engage with that, or to, like, join you in shining your light.
I like that. There's a quote, it's one of my favorite in history, and I think this is a perfect example of the difference between evangelicals and social gospel Christians. They love to preach with words, but one of my favorite quotes of all time is, preach the gospel when necessary, use words. I think just living a life that is counter to the imperial world around us, I think that is a huge way to shine your light. Showing up at events like the Juneteenth picnic and just being there with folks and supporting folks and showing up to the Pride Parade, that's a huge thing. But it's not just that too, it's opening up your home to people that are oppressed. It's when people who are in need of resources, you share what you have with them, and then you make a stand publicly. And honestly, you're not supposed to do this in church, but vote. Voting is one of the most powerful things we can do, at least for now, in this country. What I have found personally is that when you make a stand and you shine your light, you make an attempt to do so, and you use a soapbox and you tell the truth to the church, there are those around you that want nothing more than to extinguish that light. They want to shut you down. People with power don't like giving up. And there was a scene in Captain America Civil War, because I'm a nerd, I'm going to bring it up. Paul Bettany's character, Vision, tells the group that, in a way, they're almost responsible for these conflicts that just seem to be coming their way. They're trying to fight for good, and they're realizing, hey, more fights are happening all the time. And Vision says that our very strength incites conflict. The things that we're fighting for, and the fact that we're willing to stand up, is inviting a confrontation. And I've experienced that truth, that unfortunate reality, on a consistent basis. When you stand up for the right thing, the wrong people notice, and this, no matter how you feel at the time, is a good thing. No matter how angry they get, no matter how much they threaten you, that is a very good thing. Because light incites conflict with darkness. And that conflict is necessary or things will never change. Now this week, my publicist told me that she wants me to go on TV and either debate with evangelicals that are prominent or call out evangelical extremists publicly on TV. And make no mistake, I just want you to be aware of the shit show that's coming our way. Doing so will invite all kinds of drama into my life. But know that I'm definitely willing to do so because this light that we have found in the message of social justice that permeates through the text, it needs to be heard. So when you're struggling to do the right thing because you have measured the consequences and your light may expose the darkness of this world around you, it may cause conflict, do it anyway. Because there's a time coming when we must choose between what is right and what is easy. It's Albus Dumbledore. So, do not be afraid. You are the light of the world, and my prayer is that this grassroots community is the foundation for a city on a hill that's in Santa Cruz, California. Amen?
Amen.
And until next week, may the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever it may send you. May it guide you through the wilderness and protect you through the storms. May it bring you home rejoicing at the wonders that it shows you, and may it bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. Grace and peace to you.